Gundam.tk presents Gundam F90 Type A.D.S. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2 R's 2 B's from GundamReviews.net. And anyway, today I'm happy to bring you the verdict, the final part of my review of the Gundam F90. This is an old school Gundam. It's from the year 1990 and it's got a lot of new technologies in it for its time. But how does it stack up compared to stuff today? Anyway, you're seeing it here in its full equipment variant. Remember that it can be both just the regular F90, you can have the Type A, the Type D, and the Type S, and I covered that extensively in the previous parts. But now let's get to the verdict of the overall kit. It's going to stay fully equipped for the good and the bad, but let's get straight to the bad, and let me tell you, because it's a 1990 kit, you can guess that there are quite a few knocks against this guy. Starting with just the fact of how old it is. I don't know if you really want to hold that against it, but everything about it feels old. And I'm talking about things that Bandai has improved on over the last 20 years that you come to take for granted when you go back. You're just going to find so many things that should be done that weren't done. And let's talk specifically about the plate layouts. When you've got all these colors and you need some white parts and you have a plate that actually has some white on it, why would that part be on a blue plate? And I guess it sort of makes sense because the whole idea of the F90 is that they're going to sell you the body and then they're going to sell you all the different types. Here they've got the A, the D, and the S, but they also had some other ones. But the idea being that if you've got a part on the blue plate, but it should be in white, then you don't have to slavishly keep it on all the other parts just because that's on the assault type. Anyway, it's just things like that I'm sure they would have done better today, but it's just a little bit strange and it's going to require more effort on your part, whether you want to go paint it up and fix up some of the mistakes that could have been easily prevented with some better planning. Other big issues that you're going to have is just the fact that you've got the arms falling out. This is a huge issue because you're adding extra weight on all the hard points. If you try to put in weapons at the end of the hands, you can imagine that everything's going to fall down, and you may have seen that in the review quite a few times. It's a big issue, one of the biggest ones, not to mention the fact that the thrusters, it's got thrusters all over the things like this on the D part, but also on the backpack, those things are going to fall off at a moment's notice. Now the overall gray that they use in this, I'm talking about the inner frame, the beam rifle and stuff like that, it looks pretty terrible. You're used to newer, you can imagine the Federation has its own gray color when you buy the paints. This one could certainly use something like that. The light gray just doesn't show up at all against the body, and it's something that I'm glad they've done away with more recently. But another big issue just has to be how ugly that face looks. And when you get used to newer things, especially again with master grades, let's take something like the Impulse Gundam, which is an okay Gundam on paper. When they turned it in master grade form, they just took the proportions and they just added a whole cup of awesome. And I don't know how they did it, but it works. Now with this guy, when you actually look at the line art and the cover art and everything like that, its face is long and ugly. So it's to be expected that that's reflected in the plastic model, and I suppose you could go ahead and mod that. But when you compare it to something like Master Grade F91, you just wish they had done something more with that, and you're also going to have to go and fix up a whole bunch of other things on your own. You've got lining opportunities that I skipped because I think it would just accentuate the problems. And then you've got that V-fin where they're going to give it to you in white and yellow, which is a good thing, but it's missing out. They give you a million seals, but nothing for the red and for the green. So again, paint is going to be required to bring it out to a life in any way that's trying to make cover up the fact that that face is not very good at the best of times. In terms of other things, you've got these polycaps all over the place when you're attaching on the hard points, and they are pretty terrible. They're going to be too snug sometimes, too loose other times, and then you're going to have some where they're going to rotate around, and I'm talking specifically in the forearms. When you put the things on, if the polycap doesn't line up straight, then you can't actually just slot the piece in, which means nothing's going to work, and you're going to have to try to hold it in and take 3-4 tries. In terms of other visual aspects, you've got the beam rifle, which you can see here, it's in the full equipment one, and it's sort of disappointing that it is, because compared to some of the other weapons that could be used, this is one of the duller, smaller, least interesting. It's got no articulation whatsoever, outside of the fact that it's got lining opportunities. I've got to call this as being one of the worst, if not the worst, beam rifle in all of Gundam. Then when you're looking at the overall body again, it's just too short. You may have seen it next to the Zalidia. This guy's supposed to be 14.8 meters. I don't know if he's 14.8 centimeters tall, but it just seems too small and disproportionately skinny as well. Something that you can imagine they would completely address with a master grade. Now something else that I still find strange is that they advertise, yes, it's got the A, D, and the S types, and that you can turn them into that individually. They go to great detail on the box, showing you the visuals, instructions on the inside, painted pictures. Everything's looking good except in the manga where they actually do the full equipment one, Why don't they focus on that, I figure? It's disappointing that you have to go scrounging on the internet and looking at things like playing cards to actually get a good image of what weapons are supposed to be where when you're taking what is supposedly the best, I suppose, of the ADS types and putting it all together. If you've got a good manual like that, why not show it off like this, especially considering that anybody who read the manga, that's going to be the one that they want to recreate. Onto the pile of parts for specifics for the A, D, and S type. I've got to say for the A one, the strangest thing is that it's got strange hips. You've got two pieces here, and if you look at them, they're identical in shape, which means when you put one on the left side, one on the right side, the fact that they've got stickers there on the same side means they're going to be on the wrong side, which is just poor design, or so it would seem on my part. Anyway, with the bazooka also, your gut, it's very, very dull. The beam rifle's dull, the bazooka's worse, and the fact that it's going to be big, ugly, and blue, yes, it's pretty bad to just use some cheap silver paint, but it's still better than having it in its original colors. Again, why is that on the blue plate when it could have been on a better plate and made life easier for everybody? Also, the biggest complaint about this A thing is that it's just underutilized. You've got the full equipped one, and there it is, all these extra parts, and none of them are really to be seen except for that previously mentioned bazooka. Similar complaints for the D part, where you should have some white on some of these things, and yet, again, they're just going to put it all on that silver plate. Could have easily been fixed by just having them on the white plate, which is already included in the kit. And for the S type, I've just got to laugh that yes, he's an old man, he's got a launcher wherever he goes, and he can lean back and just take a break with that. Anyway, no real complaints about the S-Type. It's looking pretty good. The only thing you're going to really have to be careful of is to have a Ziploc on hands at all times, because these parts, there's so many extras that they're very easy to lose. Wrapping up for the bad things, you've got the plastic parts that are going to break. It's very easy to take things when you're taking things out of the back section there. It's easy to break. I've already had the backpack break on me, which is very unfortunate. It's got to get fixed. The shield is probably one of the biggest disappointments. It's so ugly on the back with its all white, and you've got this hard cab point system. You'd think that that would just plug in and stay in place nicely, and this would just be an additional bonus, and it's not. This is the only way to keep it in, and it's not going to work. Whoever thought that this is going to hold up when you've got it on the arm is just not thinking about physics whatsoever. You've also got to be careful. This is a large box, so you'll probably have to pay more for shipping. And the biggest complaint, it's an old kit, 1990. Yes, you're getting 3 variations, but 2,500 yen for an old 1/100th non-grade just seems a little bit pricey for what you're going to actually be getting here in terms of quality. I'm going to wrap up this part of the verdict here, and I'm trying to think if this is the first time that I've ever done 2 parts for a verdict. Anyway, the reason being is that for me, actually, this is an old kit, and as you've heard, there's lots of problems associated with that. However, it was a lot of fun to build just because you can see how much thought Bandai had put into this kit at the time. At the time, it was revolutionary, and I'm sure that somebody who had built something from 1988 would have built this one and been very, very impressed. So stay tuned for the next part, because there are a ton of good things to go along with this, and stay tuned there for my final verdict. But anyway, if I am being too negative, why don't you let me know with a comment down below, but there are a lot of things to pick on for this. But then again, if you think about it in terms of 1990, you'll hear that there's a lot of positives as well. Anyway, everybody, Robert184, Gundam.tk, thanks for watching, stay tuned, one more part, see you next time. 3 cheers to the excess in manga, and I'm sure there were a lot of happy animators that never had to animate us.